It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, July 3rd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is talking Jack Berglund today.
Yeah, good kid.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Dev Camp Day 1 is in the books, and I think, it seems to be going pretty smoothly so far there. And, we've heard from some of the new draftees. They're excited to be there. And any word on your end from Dev Camp?
No, I mean, with me being sick, I just looked a little bit from afar. Didn't see anything unusual. Yeah, day one is always like a day where everybody talks about things and tries to get acclimated, get their legs under them because they haven't been on the rink in a few weeks, that kind of thing. So you can't be too hard on anybody on day one. But overall, if I look at the talent level, I think it's kind of like mid. There's a couple of really good stars, potential stars, but it's not as loaded as it was maybe like. I'm not going to put a time estimate, but they've had better camps with more talent. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I think so. But I think, there's a lot of excitement about the new guys for
Oh yeah,
sure. And I am personally excited about them, and especially Jack Berglund, who we are going to talk about on today's show. And, the more I dig into this guy, I just feel like the potential is really there for him. It could go either way, but I feel really good about it based on the things that he's good at versus what he has to get better at. And, being a taller pick at 6'3" to 10-ish, I think that's a really good size for a center for this team, looking at the future, and that he's so smart on the ice and he knows how to use his physicality. And I think that is going to be really important to be flexible within the Flyers in terms of what kind of role he can provide out there. And the more skills you have, the more different situations you can be put in. And so if he just gets a little better at all of those things that he's already very good at, I think that could bode well for the Flyers.
yeah. I don't. When they say bottom six potential, I think it's really third line or bust. Honestly, I don't picture him as a fourth liner. He's not physical enough right now. Like he's 1.08 hits a game. Yeah, he could ratchet that up a little bit, but it's not fully in his nature. But I do think he's a center, and I think he's a smart kid. I did get to know him a lot because of the flight we were stranded on, and so probably got some insight into just how he's a level-headed guy on the ice. I do like a lot of things. He played in all situations. He did get 37% on defensive zone starts, which is better than some guys. But again, it's J20. So when you start watching a
Right.
lot of J20, here's what pops out. Like if he's on the rush, yeah, it's not that fast of a rush. He could get, he could be behind some of the defensemen in that league, but they're not going to be the same kind of quality even in international play. So he does have a really good shot. He could score from far away, good one timer and wrist shot, but he's doing that at J20. So, and we may not know anything because he's probably not making the SHL to start the year because he's already set up to, I think, to go to Färjestad anyhow. So he'll try out. He probably won't make it. And then there's you just hope maybe he gets a few games in at the end of the year in the SHL, but he's not going to be like an SHLer probably for another year. That's the reality.
Yeah, and I think that's where I would expect him to be, right? He's going to push for a spot there and maybe get a few of those games, like you said. but not be a consistent SHL guy, which I think, tracks well. And you talk about his shot. Yeah, I watched a bunch of video on him and I really do like his shot. I think he's smart about it. I think he's patient with his shot. And the thing that's going to take time for him, I think, is the transition to a faster game.
Right.
So he is overly patient on his shot sometimes, which
Yeah.
I think is going to be the big adjustment for him as the game picks up. He's not going to have time for those risks
No.
that he does now, and that's going to be the big adjustment. But I think if he can like build up that speed and get his
Mhm.
shot off a little faster and a little faster as this season goes on, I think that's the biggest thing he should work on personally.
Yeah, I think those are the things that I noticed. And, when I watched a lot of video, I did see him live last year, and in international competition, he was good. He, he was a top scorer for his team, and I believe they won the tournament at the when I saw him. So all those things, boded well. I just think when he hits that next level, he's going to have to really be ready. So that's why he's, you know, a little bit on the low end of the curve, and that may be okay because it's probably going to take him more time. Like I wouldn't be looking for him in 3 years. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think 3 years is, like, when you start thinking about it, right?
Right.
And then kinda go from there, but, I think that, given that he has such a good hockey IQ, and he knows how to use his size to protect the puck, I think those kinda things are, to me, are harder to teach
Yeah.
in
Sure.
terms, and so the things he is a little bit better at, are skills that I think will only get better in time, and as the competition he plays against is bigger and stronger, and as he gets bigger and stronger, that's, maintaining those skills at a high level is gonna be, an important part of his development process.
Yeah, I mean, thanks to Instat Huddle, I mean, he was 53% on faceoffs, 53% on puck battles. Those are good
Mhm.
numbers. He's
Yeah.
definitely going to put on, I would say, 15 pounds of muscle and over the next few years. So he is a little lanky right now. And yeah, those are things that'll bode well for him. Uh, he's going to be 19 in October. So, like I said, he's going to be one of those guys that is gonna be on a little bit of a longer track, but worth waiting for.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think that, you know, at least I appreciate having some diversity on this team
Mhm.
in terms of where the developing is taking place. Like, I think this draft class overall, including Bergland, is good for that, that we're going to see guys develop in the USHL, in the Swedish league, in the Finnish league, like just the breadth of different paths here is really good, and this is just one of them as part of that. And I think that's part of having a broad-based prospect pool, right? Is having like different options and different opportunities to get people ice time that's going to
Yeah,
work out the best for them,
yeah, and I think that's important, and, he definitely has a good attitude. I think he understands the game and understands, how to be a pro. That's in his DNA, and that's good.
Do you think he's going to be a part of the World Juniors team for Sweden?
I think he'd be the part of the longer roster, but I don't know if he'll make it or not. I don't have an idea of how strong that team is right this minute, but I think he'd probably get on the long list.
Yeah, I think, that would be really good. Maybe not this upcoming
Well, this is the
year.
only one he's got a shot
Well,
at.
that's true. That's true. Now I'm thinking about it because
Yep.
he'll be 19
Yep.
for this one. So, well, hopefully he can make the team and get a shot at getting some strong international play because he did have a pretty solid U18s, and I think that really helped him a lot.
It did. I mean, it definitely did. Everybody has a little recency bias in him, and he did well, and that I think helped him. And look, the Flyers had an eye on him, and that's good. Yeah, all good things. I mean, people can say, "Hey, this is what we got for Jay O'Brien." Okay, that's a good return, uh, but it's still potential, and that's all potential right now.
Yeah, well, that's what the draft is. It's all about potential,
Yep.
except for one or two guys every year. So,
Right.
Yeah, I like the potential in this kid and look forward to seeing where he goes over the next couple of years. In the meantime, the NHL schedule is out, and so we have the Flyers schedule. We're going to take a look at that in terms of anything that stands out to us about it, as well as the Four Nations break and the initial rosters that came out, and if any Flyers have a chance to make the final cut on any of these teams. We're going to do that coming up next. It's summer, which always makes me think of baseball, and especially with the Phillies being a ton of fun this season, I want to be there in person as much as possible. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They've got killer last minute deals, views from your seat, and a low price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying those MLB tickets in your town, all those summer concerts, and so much more. My favorite part of the app is that it's great for getting notified about last minute flash deals, and they let you save even more with zone deals, where you pick a section and let Game Time choose the seat for you. Best of all, they have all in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout, and your tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We have a schedule for next season. As of yesterday, we just had the home opener and the one other game that was spoiled by the Flames home opener. And that let us know that the Flyers were starting next season on the road. And I think, it's a little bit jarring to have the first, set of games for the team, on the West Coast starting at 10 p.m. It's a little bit rough um, for us. But I think that, it's good to get it over with in some ways, right?
Yeah, and look, I mean, my honest gut feeling is Mitchkov's not going to play in all those games. You're not going to have him starting on his career on all these road games in Western Canada. I just don't think it makes sense.
I think he's going to play at least two of them.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to play all of them. I don't.
Really, that's going to be an interesting prediction to come back to at the beginning of the season, because I think it's hard to say. Like, I honestly wouldn't say. I got to wait till I see him at camp.
It has nothing to do with he could be the best player in the world. He's just not used to this kind of travel. Like, he's got to travel to the other side. He's gonna, he's not used to it.
Russia's pretty big.
Yeah, it's not like this though. I mean, maybe there's a couple of trips a year. I don't know. I don't know enough to say that they have equal travel, but I'm just saying to start his career off of Vancouver and Edmonton, I think he's going to miss one of the two of those games. I do.
Well, I don't know. I want to put a pin in that because
That's fine.
I disagree, and I think that it's really going to depend on what he looks like at camp, and I need to get a feel for what Torts is saying about him.
Oh, Torts is gonna. He's not going to say anything about him for at least the first month. It's all going to be like basic stuff, unless he's really
But
failing.
we'll be able to tell. That's the thing. You can
I
always.
don't know.
I
I
think
don't
so.
know.
I think so. But I'm going to wait to see him at camp before I make
Okay.
any proclamations like that. I would say the other big observation about the schedule this year. Well, first off, there are 13 back-to-backs this year. There were 12 last year. Only one more. That's not too bad. As the NHL goes, it's pretty run of the mill. But there's a similarity to this past season and this trend that they've been doing. So I was kind of looking at when they start facing division rivals, and so we have two games against Washington in a home and home in October, which is interesting. But then there's a Carolina game early in November, another Carolina game, and like the Rangers at the end of the month. We just don't have like a block
No.
of in division games until the second half of the season.
Which is the way they want it, and that's fine. I get it. The biggest thing is through these first 8 are going to be very challenging. Washington got a lot better in this offseason with their trades. They're not the same Washington team that faced them at the end of last year. That's for sure. They're better in net. They got Chikrin. They got Dubois. They got a lot better. So these matchups: Vancouver, Edmonton, Seattle, Calgary, Vancouver, Washington, Minnesota. This is a big test. Like,
Yeah.
this is a lot harder than the start of last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The other kind of block of games I'm looking at, speaking of the individual stuff, is the second half of January is crazy town where, the 14th at Columbus, and then there's at Islanders, at New Jersey. They come home, for a single game against Detroit, but then it's like back at it, at Rangers, at Islanders. Like they're spending like a week in New York,
Yeah, they really are,
basically.
because it's at Rangers, at Islanders, then they come home for Jersey, and then they're back on the island. That's weird.
It is weird. Like the whole second half of January, they're basically going to be here in
Why
New
didn't
York,
they
which
just
is
go back to back
crazy.
to back to back to back to back?
It's
Ranger,
yeah,
Islander, Jersey. Why didn't
Devil.
they just do that? Yeah,
Yeah,
why didn't
I
they just do
know.
that?
Yeah, it's really, really wild. So that part of the schedule, I think, is going to be a bloodbath in terms of like the rivalries heating up, and they're going to get really physical, I think.
Yeah,
And February, there's a home and home against the Pens, which I think will be exciting.
that'll be fun. Yeah.
And yeah, and then I just feel like the season sort of peters out in April, with there's a Rangers Islanders kind of thing, but then it's like at Ottawa against Columbus, at Buffalo. Like that's
Yeah.
boring to me.
Well, I mean,
But
Utah comes in December 8th. That's fun.
yeah,
Um, and then they go out to Utah in February. So that'll be interesting.
yeah, just like a short road trip to the Avs and Utah. And it's really interesting having Utah there geographically to
Yeah.
change the nature of the Western road trips, because it creates a little bit more of a natural, like, Western path than it was with Arizona, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
This
But
end of
you
the
group it
season,
with different teams.
yeah, you do. This end of the season is not going to be easy when you got Nashville. Montreal certainly beatable. Rangers, Islanders, Ottawa, they're all better. Columbus, okay, you got some easier one. Buffalo's a little better. Their goaltending's better. That's not going to be an easy end to the season.
No, I just think it's not like, the big rivalry matchups to end the
Well, the
season,
Rangers,
which
you got the Rangers, you got the Islanders, they're in there.
for the last 3 games, though?
No, not I mean, April 9th, April 12th.
Yeah.
It's close. And then Ottawa's going to be much improved. Ottawa will be at Ottawa's. That's a tough game late in the year.
Yeah, and of
But
course, we have the, holiday road trip, but this time
yep,
it's to warmer climates in California instead of the, um, Canadian tundra, so I know there's gonna be a lot of
the writers
media
will be
very
happy.
happy
Oh yeah,
happy about that one. And, yeah, so, we have a really busy schedule. March is gonna be insane with as many games as there are. January and March are very, very busy, for the Flyers, but in February, there is, the Four Nations break, which is taking the place of the All-Star game, and so there's, like, a whole, week and a half off for this, and they put out the,
and I'm going to say
initial
I'm not in favor of
rosters.
it. I don't love it. I'm not in favor of it. There's only 4 nations. Because it's only 4, I'm not fully behind it. That's my problem.
Yeah, God, that Team North America from the World Cup was the greatest thing ever,
It
and I
was,
know
and
you can't, like,
that's why they'll never do it again, because it was so good. They didn't even, you could tell, like, they were just starting to get their legs under them in that tournament. Like, it would have been so good.
I know. I feel like, though, that was lightning in a bottle, and I feel like maybe they're scared they couldn't recreate it,
Oh no, they can
and
recreate it.
but
There's enough guys. They don't want to
well,
recreate it.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess, but I feel like it's both annoying to the players for these countries that have to play in it and maybe wanted the time off, and annoying for the countries that aren't represented here that would have
Right.
wanted to play. I think it's a no-win situation But that being said, I do look forward to these games because I do think that ultimately, when it comes down to it, they will be fun
Yeah, I
when
mean,
they
the players
actually
are going
hit
to
the
want to win
ice.
for their country. There's no doubt, but
Yeah.
there's just too many players excluded. That's my problem.
Yeah, I think so too. And you think about it with the Flyers players, I really think like the only Flyers that could potentially make it are Ristolainen, and that's a question mark,
Yeah,
I think. And then I think Sam Urson
yeah,
could maybe make the cut as like the third goaltender for Team Sweden. If you look at it, I think Markstrom and Olmark have the first two
right.
spots
But he
there,
could
and
be the
it's that
next.
he could be the next one, and that it'll depend on how his season goes. But that's kind of where I draw the line. But is there any other Flyers that you think could make
Yeah,
the cut?
I think there's a chance for Emil Andre. I mean, depending on how he's doing that year, it's possible he could get in there. But it's a long shot. And Cam York, I think, would have some sort of shot, but there's a lot of defense in the US, so it'd be very hard. But I think you get at least a discussion.
Yeah, I think obviously Brock Faber had a tremendous
Oh
season
yeah.
this past year, and so he kind of takes one of those bottom pairing spots, in my opinion, and so on the right side. And so now I'm just like, is there room here?
He could be an extra. Like that's what he
Yeah,
would be.
that's true. That's true. If he's the extra defenseman, I think that makes sense
Yeah. I think there's a
for
chance for
that
that.
team.
Yeah. I mean, at least it's something. Flyers fans will have something to watch.
Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting when they put the preliminary rosters out. The only team that has a goalie is Finland, I think,
Okay.
right now. You
Yeah.
say you say Saros is the only
Right.
goalie.
Saros. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like all the other teams that have just forwards and defensemen as of now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I will tell you this, and this goes to good drafting. In his draft year, I did say it that Esa Lindell was a good defenseman. I liked him. He was kind of under the radar, and when Dallas picked him, I had seen maybe like the start of that season. I saw a scout, Mark Leach, in the elevator going up to the game in MSG, and I said, "Hey, you made a really good pick of a guy that I really liked in the draft." And he goes, "Who?" And I said, "Esa Lindell." And he goes, "How do you know about him?" And so I had to explain that I look out for this stuff. I do a show and everything. He goes, "Oh," so like that's a really good pick. Now he's risen to the point where he's one of the guys getting mentioned in this. So I think it's a third round pick.
I think so. But yeah, I think all the teams are off to a good start. Canada looks scary. The U.S. looks like everybody's scary with it
Yeah,
still.
they're all
And for
good.
the yeah, it'll depend on the depth and the goaltending, in my opinion. And I think that's where Team USA is going to struggle a little bit beyond Hellebuck, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, easily the US could win it. It could be like the old World Cup, but the problem is there could be more competition in this and there's not.
Yeah. Yep. All right. We have a lot of questions about this Four Nations tournament. You have a lot of questions about the Flyers. We will get to them coming up next. All right. In our mailbag and comment pool for this week, there was a YouTube comment saying perhaps some of those picks in current roster players will be moved for players that are suited to giving Mitchkov better line mates, referring to the 2025
Right.
picks.
Yeah,
What do you think about that approach to getting the right center?
I mean, it's something that could be used, and we talked about it on the last show, but the problem is you have to have the cap space to do it. Because if you're doing that, you're getting somebody who's already established that's going to be at a high salary.
Yeah, I think we couldn't do that for 2 years, which
Right.
may not be a bad
You
thing.
couldn't
Like,
they can't do it this year.
yeah, they can't do it this year. They could maybe think about it next year, depending
Right.
on deals and other potential cap clearing options that they have out there. And I honestly don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think if they could do it next year or the year after, okay. I think that's fine too. And that leads me into Michael's question, which is what is the best strategy for those six top picks of the 2025 draft? Combination of picks and trade assets. What's the minimum number of them they should hold on to for actual picks?
Well, I mean, if it was me, I have to, and I think the reason that Danny said it's like a wait and see because he has to see if the team's any good or not this year. If the team's not good and you've got a chance to, pick early with some of these with your picks, uh, and you also have to see how the other teams are doing too. So there's some strategy with that. You can't do anything for now. You got to wait till the half season mark and sort of like figure out where you might end up in this draft, where those other teams are going to end up in this draft, and then what you might target. It's too early right now.
Yeah, I think so. As a general rule, I would just, in the back of my head, say it would probably make the most sense to have at least two of those first rounders going into the draft itself, like so that you can use one of them as an asset, a trading asset at the draft, and still have another first round pick. But that's really the only limit I would put on them right now. And I would say hold on to at least one of the 3 second
Well,
rounders,
definitely
right?
hold
Because
on
you,
to one. I would say hold on to
yeah,
two, but yeah,
yeah. I think that, if you're going to have one rule, it's have two of those first rounders still in the bank on draft day
it's
going
fair.
going into it. Um, Greg asks the front office or comments the front office is painting themselves into a corner that all the people they select have to pan out. Everyone else in the metro just made a big splash today. So yeah, how do we think the rest of the division did in the draft?
Well, the Capitals did great. Like the Capitals are not the same Capitals team from last year. They're much, much better. So they fared better. The Islanders may only be slightly better with Duclair. So, but they still have Sorokin. If he goes on a tear one year, then you're still okay. But the Islanders are only marginally better. The Rangers didn't have to do much, so that's okay. And the Devils did a lot. So
Yeah.
this division got harder. It didn't get easier because now the Devils look like a playoff team again. Washington looks like they will stay in the playoffs. The Rangers will be in the playoffs, and then you have to start just questioning the rest. Columbus,
Yeah,
no. The Islanders, maybe. Flyers, I'll
yeah.
say maybe, but I really don't think so.
The Rangers to me like did what they had to, but didn't necessarily knock it out of the park
No,
either. But right now they're dealing with everybody melting down about Jacob Truba and the
right.
fact that he wants to stay with his wife and child,
I know.
God forbid.
Wow, whoever thought of that?
But yeah, I do think the Caps, what a great job they have done in terms of,
Masterful,
yeah,
masterful.
in terms
Considering
of making this transition to a potential post Ovechkin world for them.
Yeah, considering how they limped into the postseason last year, I mean, just a night and day transition. You got
Yeah,
Jacob
so
Chikrin, and that's unbelievable.
yeah, I think this is an interesting year to watch for the Caps and what it means for them and for the Flyers moving forward. But yeah, I think really, you run into the is this the year the Devils are actually going to get better conundrum
Yes,
again?
yes.
But it feels more likely this year. But I've said that in the years past too.
Right, but
So
they have 2 good
you know,
goalies now, which they didn't have
it's
before.
true. That's
Like
true.
that's the thing, and their defense is a year older, and you presume Hughes will be a little healthier. Like I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I think so too. So it is going to be significantly harder for the Flyers to
And I mean Jack
uh
Hughes, not Luke.
meet. Yes, yes. Although Luke's okay in his own right,
No,
but
I know, but he
uh,
wasn't injured. That's all I was saying
that's
for
true.
people. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
true. Um, yeah, I just think as far as the draft itself goes, it's really the Caps that I think had the biggest success. And I think that that just bodes well for them moving forward.
Mhm.
William wants to know, I keep looking for any updates on Johansson and Peterson, less so Risto. The first two represent 9 million in dead cap space. Something has to give. What do you think that will be?
Well, I mean, again, I said early on when the buying frenzy is going on, no one's going to take Danny's call about wanting Johansson. Now, after the dust settles, if the team feels like they could use him as a third line center, they're going to ask the Flyers to eat a certain amount of that money. And so you're going to have more dead money, but you'll at least be able to free up a couple million possibly on the salary. And that's all you can hope for, and that's what they have to do is just trade him for that, and either they'll get a player back or just some sort of draft pick, and that's it. Like, that's the best they can hope for. Risto, I don't think you can do anything with because no one's seen him
No.
play, so that one is just hanging out there. At least with Johansson, there's a chance for a little bit, but the problem is all these things take time, and so, like, if you were a Flyers fan hoping that you were gonna get, like, a game-changing player, they're not. They're all used up, they're all taken. At this point, you're just kinda looking for that hockey trade to dump some salary, and the problem is that on day 1 of free agency, a lot of teams spent like they haven't spent money in 3 years.
With the
So
huge cap increase, yeah.
right, and they spent all their free money, and so, like, you have to worry now how
It
many
was
teams.
over $1 billion in
I
new
know,
contracts.
crazy. So how many teams are really gonna take Danny's call and try and take in a player off their hands even at half salary, There's gonna be a smaller list now. Makes it harder.
Yeah, as far as Cal Petersen goes, Danny said specifically that they are not going to buy him out, and it makes sense that if they were looking at a buyout scenario where it was Cam Atkinson or Cal Petersen, because it's similar kinds of money, 1 year left on the
Right,
deals, they have to keep the goaltender in this
right,
circumstance.
right.
Like there was no choice. So I totally understand
Yeah,
why that went the way it did. And he and Kolosov are in theory going to be the two goaltenders for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms this year. And honestly, with Fedotov being unproven, having a goaltender in the system like Cal Petersen with NHL experience, love him or hate him, he's got the experience
right.
and
That's true.
can get called up. So I'm not mad about that at all. I think it was the right decision to make.
That's fair.
Very last question. Honestly, this is just a dig at you, Russ,
I know.
because over on YouTube, we put up your little short videos for reactions to some of the Flyers draft picks, and they were great nuggets of information. Video quality, not so great. We got to
Yeah.
figure out how to upgrade your phone here.
Well, I mean, I have an iPhone 14. I was in a dark corner and I could not get the flash to light up with the video, and so, like, that's it. When you're in a room stuck with, like, 100 people, you gotta find this little corner, and it just yeah, I could not get the light to go on, so it's the way it goes.
All right. Well, we're going to work on that so that y'all can stop insulting Russ's camera skills as if he has a 2008 flip phone, which frankly was a good line. I will give that commenter
That's a good
that
line, but
line.
this is my phone, it's a perfectly good phone.
All right. That'll do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. We will not be back tomorrow for the holiday, but we will be back on Friday talking dev camp. So stay tuned for that. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got questions you want us to answer, let us know on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ, I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.